It reminded me of the scene in the Hunger Games where the guy's like, here, have this drink or whatever. And they're like, what is it? It's like, oh, it makes you throw up. So you can eat more food. And so they're like, okay, these people are sitting here making themselves throw up so they can eat more food, and then you got people starving. Are we somehow getting close to a dystopian society?
Like, society collapses in situations like this, where there are people who have $1 trillion, a la Elon Musk, and then people who can't eat because there's nothing that they can do that's valuable enough to be paid for it. Like, that's how revolutions get started. All of the metrics are moving in the wrong direction at the same time. I'm curious as to how we've ended up in this spot.
And there's things the human brain can process that AI just can't yet. When compute power can equal the human brain, that will be a scary day. And Gen Zs are just Millennials 2.0. So you've got 4 very diverse generation groups all clashing at one time. And the real question is, are we just going to ride this out? And I know this is going to sound absolutely horrible, but at some point the older generation is going to start dying off.
Because I'm hearing from a lot of employers that Gen Z applicants don't have the EQ. Like, they don't have the interpersonal skills, so they're not going to lead that charge. It's going to have to be more the millennials and Gen X's that are going to have to lead that, because, you know, the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, most of them have not developed conflict management skills and communication skills they need to succeed in corporate America.
Again, I think we're at a crossroads. I mean, there's going to be a breaking point, and the system is going to reset. And I think we're just at the cusp of that breaking point. I'd say we got another 5 years.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you say that? All right, what are some other things that people can do if this is really going to get worse before it gets better? What advice would you have for them?
Oh, I don't know. Good luck.
Good luck.
No.
Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
Ryan, I've got friends in the job market on both sides, friends that are looking for work, friends that are looking to hire. And what I'm hearing is that everybody is miserable, that we've somehow found ourselves in a job market that is screwing everyone. Every generation, whether you're looking for work or looking for an employee, nobody's happy and everyone's screwed. How is that possible?
So you're saying, how have we simultaneously created a job market that every generation gets screwed?
Yes.
I got a spicy take for you.
All right.
The job market isn't broken. It's been deliberately demolished by CEOs who think flattening their org chart is the same as innovating, while boomers death grip their corner offices like Gollum with a ring.
Oh, man. All right. Let's dig into this. Let's talk about who's really winning, because, spoiler alert, it is no one. Business Insider has called this the Great Flattening. But that's kind of like calling the Titanic a boating accident. It has been just company after company has been laying off scores of middle management. And almost all of it, at least everything that I've heard and read, is being cited as the impact of AI, which we can talk about that in a second. But you're seeing these organizations just decimate middle management roles. And yet somehow still nobody can find a job. So I'm curious as to what's actually going on.
Yeah, how are we simultaneously trying to mass hire people and then so many people are getting laid off? It's interesting. I like this concept, the Great Flattening. Like, this just doesn't work.
Mm-mm. So let's talk about what's happening first, and then let's talk about why it doesn't work, because I think that's where we need to get to. But here's just a couple of stats I've seen and I found. Baby boomers still control 41% of CEO positions.
Are you serious?
I know many of them.
41% of
41%. Yes, they can't retire because either they don't have the finances that they need, or maybe it's just an ego thing. But so boomers still have over 40% of the CEO jobs. Gen X is kind of caught between the boomer bottleneck and the millennial tech savvies. They're kind of this forgotten generation that's just being skipped over. The millennials are stuck in this sandwich generation, right? Where they're having to take care of their parents and raise kids at the same time. They're going to inherit organizations that are just falling apart, but they haven't been trained how to fix them. And then Gen Z is sitting there on the sideline trying to get into the workforce. I think 58% unemployment rate now for Gen Z, for new college grads. And half of them are actively refusing management roles. Like, they refuse to go into management. They do not want to become leaders. So you've got boomers that won't leave, Gen X's that are getting skipped over, millennials are getting squeezed, and Gen Zs can't even get into the game.
I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on 41%, 41.5% of CEO positions are held by boomers. Mm-hmm. I just had to Google this real fast. Like, what is the average age of a boomer? And it says between 61 and 79.
Yep.
Okay. 61, I get it. 79, there is so much technological advancements that had made in the last 20 years, just the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. How can an older generation effectively lead? Great mentors, don't get me wrong, fantastic mentors. But then what did you say? We talked about the great flattening, I think is the word you used earlier. And some of the stats say that it's the CEOs that are doing it and calling it innovation. But when you have, was it 52% Gen Zs refuse management roles? I think you're starting to see kind of the part of the problem. If the younger generation entering the workforce doesn't want management roles and CEOs are still trying to get what they can out of their companies, and they don't have many years left. I mean, 41% doesn't have very many years left. I think you found your problem.
I see multiple problems there, but which one are you talking about?
The people in control are trying to squeeze what they can out of their business, whereas the younger generation in the workforce refuses to be in middle management. Why are we flattening the organizations when 52% doesn't even want to refuses those roles?
So it raises a couple of interesting questions for me. One is, what do you believe about the future of work? Because in a world where your boss is ChatGPT, do you need managers? Or do you just need people to do work and ChatGPT is orchestrating everything? Or is it actually the other way around? Do you end up with fewer doers and just a handful of middle managers that are kind of orchestrating everything?
I think the thing is, even with AI, you need a level of orchestration. So, okay, maybe that's a new manager role, individual contributor, and not to turn this into railroad this into an AI conversation. I mean, we're starting to see, I wouldn't say the brakes being put on AI, because it's definitely not. But you're starting to see where generative AI, like enough of it's been put out there where people are starting to detect the fake, right? And there's been a resurgence of human in the loop. And so the value of that very short period of time over the past, 12, 18 months where the human, AI was going to replace the human, the pendulum has swung like it normally does. And now it's starting to swing back towards center. I don't think it's never going to go all the way back the other way, but we're starting to see more value in human in the loop. We're starting to see, advertising agencies and development companies go, we use real human. And there's even been studies where they say AI, it's clear the human brain is still the more superior computer.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I agree. Lower level task work, 100% is going to go to AI. It's what we used to pay people to do lower level task work, 100% that's going to get outsourced to AI. It just means everybody's going to evolve.
Right. You've got to evolve up the value ladder, or AI is going to take your job.
Right. I hate to sound crude, but and again, there's still going to be robots that take over. I don't think you're ever going to completely replace the human in, let's say, fast food or warehouse, or you can get pretty close to it. I'm sure you can replace 90%. I mean, Amazon's done it in their warehouses, right? Like the robots move all the stuff around and do a lot of the packaging, but the human does the last little component, right? We've taken 90% of the humans out of an Amazon warehouse. I think that's where, if you don't evolve, that's where you might end up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think AI is going to be the long-term culprit for jobs. I think it's going to be a component. And I don't think AI is going to replace your manager. There's still the human element, human in the loop component of it. And if you want humans to work well together, you need an orchestrator. Just like, you know what, in the new levels of AI, I've been working with orchestrators of getting multiple agents working on multiple projects and working together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's absolutely phenomenal. The throughput, the work, the things that can get done, how fast it can get done. You still have to have an orchestrator.
Right.
That's what the manager is for the humans. So I think this whole flattening of the organization and getting rid of managers, all you've actually done is just you've sped up the mundane task, but really have slowed down progress.
Yeah. So how do we get here? Like, how do we find ourselves in this situation? I think there's a lot of things that are at play. I don't think it's too crazy to say that there's probably still some COVID hangovers, whether that is, remote work or just the economic impact of that. Like, in the defense of boomers, depending on what your portfolio had in it, the last 5 years could have been devastating to your retirement plan. And so some people might need to stay in the workforce for a little bit longer because they don't have the money they were expecting to have had because of what's been going on in the markets over the last 5 years. I do think AI's caught a lot of people off guard. And I think many people are scrambling to try to figure out how to not get left behind with that.
True. I also think there's another dynamic here. And I'm going to call, I mean, we as humans, we love to control things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We used to be, and this was way before my time, so this is what I've read in history books, right? And what I've gotten from the older generations now is, do you remember, and we all read about it, you would reach an age and you would go to your boss and you would say, I think it's time for me to retire. And your boss would say, no, Bob, you need to work about 3 more years before you retire. You know what, Bob? It's your time. Let's set up the retirement party. You can get your pension. Here's your gold watch. Thank you for your service. The manager or the big boss was the one that everybody literally followed. And if it wasn't your time to retire, if your boss said you had 5 more years, you worked 5 more years. We're in control of our own destiny now. Don't you dare, asshole, tell me I need to work 5 more years. Fuck you. I'm retiring right now just out of spite.
Right.
So when you change the dynamic, and now that the and I don't want to say the boomer generation is a greedy generation, right? Like, but it was a prosperity generation. We grew wealth. We had the second homes and the boats and, just the things. We accumulated all the things. Well, you got to fuel that somehow, and that also came with a level of control. So there's a desire of not wanting to give up control from that generation. I'm sorry, Gen X. Every 4 generational cycles, there's always the left out generation, and Gen X just happens to be it. You bring in the dynamic of the millennials. We are the first generation to be born with technology, the first generation to teach the older generation's technology. So that flips the paradigm upside down. And Gen Zs are just millennials 2.0. So you got 4 very diverse generation groups all clashing at one time. And the real question is, are we just going to ride this out? And I know this is going to sound absolutely horrible, but at some point, the older generation is going to start dying off. Like, it's just fact of life, right?
I mean, people are living longer. So
true. True, and I do think that's another component of it, right?
I think
More
that's a
people like
component of it, right?
that's. I mean, even what is it? Social Security. We've increased
Yeah,
the age
that's
you get Social Security. It went from 65 to 66, 7, 8. I can't remember the progression.
yeah, that's the problem with Social Security is we weren't expected to live well into our 70s when Social Security was created, and now
Right.
that's not uncommon. I
Well,
had a client working in his 90s.
well, and you think about it, 6 or 7. What is it? 70's the new 60s. 60's the new
Yeah,
50. So we
right,
just pushed everything a decade out,
right.
and
Right.
I
And
think
so
that's what it is.
it's not crazy to think that boomers could be in leadership roles, contributing, healthy, active, well through their 70s. Like that's not crazy. So it's not like there's going to be this mass extinction event.
Well, just what I looked up earlier. The average age of boomers is anywhere between 61 and 79. The ones that are 61, they still got another 10, 12, 15 years left.
Easy. Yeah.
So the real
Assuming they're in
question is,
good health.
yeah, the real question is, are we going to figure this out before the next decade? Or is this just going to be what it is until the pendulum starts swinging again?
All right. I'll reserve. Let's wait until we get to the end of the episode, and then I want to hear how you think it's going to play out. Let's talk about this idea of corporate flattening. Is the great flattening actually making companies more competitive, more efficient? Or is this just some sort of like corporate anorexia and corporate suicide in slow motion?
I think right now and I hate to stick onto the older generations for a minute. I think they're trying to retire. I think they're trying to get valuation. I guess this is because I deal with this group of individuals every single day. They're wanting to sell their company. Their company's not worth what it's worth, and so there's I can't get what I want, and I can't get the valuation out of it. So I'm going to try to flatten things to move faster.
Right.
And it becomes a tortoise and a hare mentality. I see a lot of these business owners where they think their business is just going so slow and they want it to grow faster. And if they just removed all of the management, then they could bark orders on high and the company will just go faster.
Mm.
But why do we always forget the story of the tortoise and the hare?
Well, and it's not just small business owners that are looking for an exit or a liquidity event, right? It's also Google and Microsoft and Meta and Amazon that have eliminated something like 50,000 middle management jobs in the last couple of years. So it's both very large and very small. And I would imagine everything in between, where you're seeing, rather than one director has 2 or 3 managers, each with 2 or 3 people, you're now seeing one leader with 10 directs or 12 directs. So it's just a lot flatter. There's fewer steps up or fewer rungs up the ladder, which is just going to make it a leadership nightmare in the coming decades, because the gap now between the leader and the doer is such a big gap. There used to be intermediary steps to learn those leadership and management skills, and those steps are gone. And so how are you going to make that kind of a jump?
So I agree with you to an extent, but I also think there was a level of corporate bloat in the bigger organizations. And I think that's
Okay.
because the evolution of technology. I think we had more people in the mix because the older systems and methods and way you operated businesses required more managers. Smaller groups worked in silos that need a manager.
Mm-hmm.
That manager talked to another group and so forth and so forth. And that was the only way to make the big machine go round.
Right.
Versus I think as technology's evolved and those legacy models, especially in corporates, I think we had too many people and it needed to be thinned out. Now I think there's a difference between thinning out and flattening.
Okay. How would you describe the difference?
I would say having an appropriate level of removing the game of telephone, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fewer people in the chain, the more clear the communication becomes from let's say from one to, if the chain's 15 people long, the message is screwed up by the end, right? Versus if the chain is about 6 people long, the probability of it maintaining integrity or at least close enough, is exponentially lower. So if you can remove the number of people between the work and the decision making, then you can have a more fluid product or service or offering or throughput, right?
Right.
But if you take that from, if you go from one to, or from 15 to 2, okay, now you're just pedaling really, really, really fast. Like there's not enough. Great communication is flattened, but now there's no
Not enough bandwidth to get stuff done.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a risk here for organizations that are pursuing results, short-term results at the expense of long-term organizational health. One is just you put yourself in an unhealthy situation, but two, the world is changing so fast. And if you're super streamlined, I think you sacrifice agility. Like your ability to pivot and go do something else is severely limited because you just don't have organizational bandwidth to innovate, to try new things, to explore new markets, new products, new ideas. I think there's a lot of danger in downsizing or flattening too quickly.
Well, I like this here. It says Deloitte found that through 2026, 20% of its organization will use AI to flatten structure, eliminate over half of its middle management. Let me phrase that. Deloitte through 2026 is 20% of its organization will use AI to flatten the structure, eliminating over half of its middle management. So I think in some regards you can call this progress. In some regards you can call this just, some corporate orchestration BS or something like that. And here's where I think
call it downsizing with the TED Talk.
There you go. Downsizing with the TED Talk. I think how many one-on-one calls have you been on where you've had to not be a manager in terms of people development, but you had to, hey, where's that task at? Hey, I need you to stay on top of this. Hey, let's look at your to-do list you're not doing. That stuff can be automated with AI. The more we use systems and tools, there's a level of accountability that can be maintained where AI can be looking for the anomalies, tasking out work, etc. And I agree, that level of management where you're just shuffling papers for people, I agree, that can go away. And a large organization like Deloitte, if they could use AI to eliminate the paper shuffling, and the managers that remain are legitimately like, how you doing today, Bob? You see like you're stressed. Hey, what do we need to do? Do you need to go on some PTO? You haven't taken a vacation. You're overworked. Maybe we need to move a project around. Like that's the human element of management, right?
Right.
And I think what we're going to see is the evolution of management. I think it's fake. We've had too many fake managers that are task managers. Yeah. And I think AI is going to replace them. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a rise and we've already been seeing this it started over a decade ago. I'm sure people have talked about multiple decades, but as we evolved from less technology to more technology, right? EQ has been going down. We are so aware of it now, but society, it's like the battleship that's going, 30 knots and you killed the power to the engines. It's not stopping for a while. It's going to keep going through the water until it finally, gets some distance down the path, and then it'll slow down. I think that's where we're at right now. Is there's just been so much momentum of the old legacy way that we're fine. Like we know EQ is a problem. We know we need people management. We know we need employee success, but the solutions are more IQ, pedal faster, build a faster horse.
Right. Use AI.
I think we're about to start see the toppling effect. And I think AI is going to be the driver of that.
Which is interesting because I'm hearing from a lot of employers that Gen Z applicants don't have the EQ. Like they don't have the interpersonal skills. So they're not going to lead that charge. It's going to have to be more the millennials and Gen X's that are going to have to lead that because, the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, most of them have not developed conflict management skills and communication skills they need to succeed in corporate America.
if you believe such a thing in this generational theory,
Okay.
the millennials will be the next greatest generation, producing the greatest next wave of the greatest leaders in history.
I think you're just saying that because you were born in the 80s.
I am, but I also have a book on my bookshelf that says it, and I really
Oh,
like the
okay.
author.
All right. Is it a buddy of yours or something?
I'd say a friend of a friend, sure.
Friend of a friend. Okay. So you've got return to office. You've got decreasing engagement scores, employee burnouts on the rise. Layoffs are on the rise. Employee satisfaction scores are dropping. Turnover's rising. Like all of the metrics are moving in the wrong direction at the same time. And so I'm curious as to how we've ended up in this spot.
Well, some would say, "Welcome to capitalism." That's just the way the system goes.
Yeah.
Again, I think we're at a crossroads. I mean, there's going to be a breaking point, and the system is going to reset. And I think we're just at the cusp of that breaking point.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I can see organizations continuing to lean heavier and heavier into AI, cutting humans in favor of the algorithms, and maybe winning for a little while even. But I think eventually you get the counter movement where teams of people who want to work together, that are motivated and committed and are creative and energized by the problem that they're going to solve, they're going to create new opportunities, create new markets, create new companies that AI can't replicate. And that starts the cycle all over again. I'm hopeful that that's coming soon, because this is getting pretty painful.
I'd say we got another 5 years.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you say that?
I mean, if you just look at the advancements from 2020 to now, and I granted, I know COVID was in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at like the progression and the dissemination of technology and the adoption I think it's just a 5 year lag. I mean, the companies that adopted AI in the very beginning phases, with ChatGPT, that was 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
So here
Really
we are
early stage.
3 years later, and companies are still struggling to figure out how to incorporate it. I think you're another 2 to 3 years away from that just getting further and further downstream. I mean,
Well,
companies, for perfect example, and don't get me wrong, there are companies probably utilizing it well, but every tool that most people use today, Microsoft Office 365, Google Workspace, Slack, ClickUp, Jira, Atlassian tools, Notion. I
yep.
mean, dozens and dozens of more. They all have, HubSpot, for example, they all have AI tools built into them.
Mm-hmm.
Most people or most companies aren't even utilizing them. And if they are, they're using it at the faster horse mentality.
Right. That's true.
How many, Slack, for example, Slack was trying to charge, was like what, $8-9 per user per month. And they came in with their AI and they're like, everybody's going to buy it $20 per user per month. It was more than twice the cost of the user license for AI. Now they're giving it away for free.
Yeah. For what? What's
Because nobody
that going to
adopted
do?
it. Nobody adopted
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I say it's going to be at least another 5 years before companies really catch on how to leverage the technology.
All right. Let's talk improvement strategies. If everything's broken, what would actually work? How do we begin to fix this?
Ooh.
I mean, the one that's not popular, but I think needs to be talked about, is the idea of a universal basic income. I think that there. So I did a talk on this several years ago, and this was before AI had really started getting traction. but was just kind of playing out Moore's law for a group of people that were not necessarily technically oriented. And just, there is a day coming where if you're talking about physicality, there is nothing that you could do that a robot can't do better. Now, that's not maybe today, but that day's not that far ahead. And that robot gets 2 times better. It gets twice as good every 18 months, right? If it's still applying to Moore's law, right? And so every 18 months, you want a 3% performance boost, and it got 10x cheaper. And in a world like that, almost all physical labor, you can't do anything that a robot can't do better. And I think there's going to need to be some safety nets in society for people who were never going to be doctors and engineers and computer science majors, right? Like they were going to have more of a blue collar career. And some of those I think will still exist, but I do think there's a lot that are going to disappear because it's honestly cheaper to get a robot to do it. And in that situation, I think there needs to be something for those people to do. They need to be taken care of.
Okay, so what was the phrase you said?
Universal basic income. So they've explored this in certain parts of Europe where they basically just said, look, you don't have to work. Whether you work, go to school, or just sit on your butt all day, here's X amount of dollars just for being alive.
I mean, don't we kind of have that in a broken, jacked up way?
We kind of do, but there's a lot of
ours is have 6 children and live on food stamps and
there's a lot of hoops and bureaucracy. This is just a flat, if you're here and you're alive, here's your money.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I do think that like society collapses in situations like this, where there are people who have $1 trillion, a la Elon Musk, and then people who can't eat because there's nothing that they can do that's valuable enough to be paid for it. Like that's how revolutions get started. So I don't think anybody likes that outcome, and we need to do something. And so I do think that that's a conversation that from a legislation standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, those are conversations that are going to need to be had in the next 10 years.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. And sorry, when you were in the middle of saying that, it reminded me of this scene in the Hunger Games. I think it's like the second movie where the guy's like, here, have this drink or whatever. And they're like, what is it? It's like, oh, it makes you throw up. So you can eat more food. And so they're like, okay, these people are sitting here making themselves throw up so they can eat more food. And then you got people starving.
Right.
So, well, and we know the outcome of that movie. The rebellion wins.
Yeah. Seem like we're really set on trying to repeat that in real life.
Well, I know this is a little bit of rabbit trail. Are we somehow getting close to a dystopian society?
There's a lot of people who'd say we're already there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm not saying I'm not taking a stance on that one, because there are places that definitely look, here in America, definitely look third world. And then there are places that are just unfathomable in terms of the wealth and resources.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think we're starting to get very like borderline dystopian as a global society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as the world is, quote unquote, shrinking because of technology. I mean, it's another thing too, is think about the global workforce now.
Oh, sure.
Think about 20 years ago, if you were going to have a call center in Mexico or, a technical center in India, that was huge investment versus now. I mean,
Stand it up over a weekend.
right. So going back to this one here. Yeah, I am with you. There's going to have to be some regulation that goes along with it. But again, I think I think it's going to come too late. I think if anything we do now, it's going to be too little too late. And it's not going to be until there's some level of mass collapse will any real change happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think with regulation probably needs to come some sort of job upskilling, right? So people that, had this job, that job no longer exists because the AI or the robots do it, but we need this thing now and nobody knows how to do it. And we can't get an AI or a robot to do it. So how do we train all of these people to go do this new job? I think those kinds of programs are going to need to be implemented and stood up quickly because the transitions are going to be painful.
Yep. And I'm curious for you. I'm wondering how much has the remote work caused some of this versus when you get the return to office. When you just having everybody in the same building just eliminates a number of pressure points.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering how much just the return to office at scale is going to reverse some of this in general. That is, I mean, some people say, and I guess it's going backwards. It's not progressing forward. It's regressing backwards. But how much would that impact overall improvement? Because if a lot of people are making decisions in this post-COVID environment where middle managers are useless and work from home is not working, and so let's fire the middle managers and go straight to the people doing the work, and then you return to office, aren't you going to find your middle management gap?
My personal take on return to office is that it's an accelerant, or it exposes what's really going on in your culture. I think healthy cultures, when brought back to the office, thrive because they were thriving remotely. I think toxic cultures, when they come back to office, just start circling the drain because they were toxic to begin with. They just maybe didn't have the metrics or the measurement systems in place to figure it out. But I think that it just exposes what you've always been. And it's why there isn't a single narrative on return to office, because good companies do great with it and bad companies suck at it.
Well, I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I know some companies that had phenomenal cultures pre-COVID, and going remote destroyed their culture.
Okay.
And now they're going back to office and they're struggling with rebuilding the culture because it crumbled. But it's because the business was not built to be a remote business. It was built to be an in-person business. And when it went fully remote, the culture
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. Companies with higher to manager to employee ratios show increased productivity according to Gusto's research. Yet everyone's doing the opposite. It's like we found out vegetables are healthy and decided to ban them. So I think this goes right along with return to office.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're finding,
but also results. It's also a red line move. It's results over the journey.
You think return to office is results?
No, I think the higher manager to employee ratio. I think flattening the org chart is a red line move.
Oh, okay. Yes, I agree with you. Well, I think what it comes down to is, I think the stat here, it says companies with higher manager to employee ratios. Well, let's think about that for a second. So that means higher manager to employee ratios. That means there's more people per manager?
No, manager to employee ratio. So it's less directs. You're getting more attention as the employee because your manager has more time to give to you.
Okay. That's what I took it as, but then I read it again. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. So I think the reason why people are going the opposite direction is, again, it's that nuance between, especially in the remote environment, they don't know what's going on. They want the result. So they
Right.
cut out what they think is slowing it down and go straight for the result. And like you said, it's the red line.
Other improvement ideas for organizations. I think the blind cutting is a bad move. I think that people need to think more intentionally. Leaders need to think more intentionally about how their organization is going to evolve with AI and design their future org chart, not just hack off limbs. I think it might boost the bottom line in the short term. I think it's going to come back to bite them in the long run.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, I've never been against just hacksawing the business.
I've never seen it work well in the long run.
Well, I mean, this goes back into, I mean, I guess it still happens, but the private equity days of, the investor looks at the spreadsheet and, says everything below this line's got to go and make it happen tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, you can't make decisions on a spreadsheet. I mean,
Yeah,
you can start the conversation by decisions on a spreadsheet, but as soon as it involves humans and, actually making things happen, you have to, engage the human.
Did I ever tell you the story about the time that I was in a situation like that where we were told by corporate we had to lay off certain number of employees, and were told, I think, directly who were supposed to lay off. And so we ended up laying off all these people. And like the next week we realized that there was only 2 guys who worked on this one system, and we laid both of them off. And so there was nobody left in the company who knew how to work on that system. And so we hired them both back as contractors for twice the rate. We all just sat there looking at each other like we're a Dilbert comic. And oh my gosh, we just hated ourselves, but it's like we were forced to do it. And then we realized the consequence and ended up paying twice as much for the same work.
That sounds like
corporate America, doesn't it?
That does.
All right. What are some other things that people can do if this is really going to get worse before it gets better? If you're leading an organization, or even just, an individual who's concerned about their own career, what advice would you have for them?
Oh, I don't know. Good luck.
Good luck.
No. Oh, I hate to sound like the broken record here. I mean, it's really learn how to leverage AI,
Mm-hmm.
and upskill, network, build the network, keep options.
I'm going to go a totally different angle. I'm going to say leadership, because I'm seeing in organizations, even embracing AI, there's just such a lack of leadership in most organizations. The people that are truly leading change, leading people, helping them become better versions of themselves, have a vision for the future, motivating people to achieve it. I think people are starving for that. And it's hard to find, especially in larger corporate organizations. I get the systemic reasons why it's not a shot. It's just they're there, but it's hard.
So what your question was, what can people do to weather this?
No, I would say, what can organizations do?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you asked like individuals. You're asking what can organizations do?
I was going to go both, but for organizations, I think I'll make this apply to both. For organizations, I think they need to find who the real leaders are, and not just put somebody in a management role because they've been there for 10 years, or because they know the code base better than anybody. It's like, find the real leaders and put them in leadership roles, because when real leaders are in leadership roles, everybody under them gets better.
I agree with that, but here is one, and not everybody's a leader.
Oh, no, they're not. That's why you've got to filter for it.
Well, and very, very few people are actually true leaders. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a number of people that are great managers, but a manager is not a leader. And I think that's where leadership development comes in, and leadership programs. I think too often people because they're either a great executor or they've got good ideas. A visionary is not a leader. A visionary is just a guy with great ideas or a gal with great ideas.
Right.
So I think I agree with you, but I'm going to put that extra caveat on there is you've got to give or provide leadership development so that you can get the right leaders in, because I guarantee you, if you give somebody that is not a qualified leader or has the desire to learn to be a leader, maybe great conversationalist, maybe have a million and one great ideas, but that will implode the organization or that department if you put people that are not leaders in leadership roles. And too many times, I'm sure you and I both, too many times we've seen people that are not truly leaders put in leadership roles, and they're wondering why the business is stagnant. Then they start firing the people underneath them and go, well, we just put them in that leadership role and they've got all these great ideas, but the people underneath them don't know how to execute. Yeah, that's not your problem.
That's not your problem. Yeah. I think leadership becomes more valuable in a world of AI because the doing becomes more of a commodity, but the ability to lead and influence and make others better is a rare skill. And if you find people that have that, you need to keep them and you need to put people under them because they are going to make your organization better.
Absolutely.
So I think that's both to the individuals and to the organizations. Organizations find leaders, develop leaders. Individuals develop leadership skills, volunteer. That's a great way to build leadership skills. If you're not getting the opportunities at work, go find some sort of a nonprofit or community organization and cut your teeth on some leadership skills in a volunteer space. Because if you can lead volunteers, you can lead employees.
I agree with what you're saying. I'm going to throw some caveats out there.
All right.
If you're not prepared to be a leader, and remember, being a leader is not having a lot of friends. There's a reason why they say leadership is lonely at the top.
Yes.
But if that motivates you, I absolutely agree. Volunteer where you can, develop your skills, get experience. If that doesn't sound appealing, I think it's then go back to what I said earlier. Develop your career. Look at the corporate, your career lattice. Look at your career portfolio. Figuring out how to make yourself more valuable, expand your skill sets, embrace AI. You know, how do you? I will say this: we are seeing more and more, especially in the more recent weeks, where human in the loop and there's things the human brain can process that AI just can't yet. That is, don't get me wrong, when compute power can equal the human brain, that will be a scary day.
Right.
Until then, everybody still has a job.
Yep. Yeah. I think that here's a great quote from LinkedIn's head economist. Predicts that as workforces shrink, employers will have to do more to attract employees. So the individuals who prepare for that power shift now will be the ones who benefit when the pendulum swings back. I think there's going to be a lot of new jobs. There's going to be a lot of jobs destroyed by AI. There's going to be a lot of new jobs created by AI. The people who are agile enough and prepared to move into those roles laterally, up, down, whatever, they're going to be the winners over the next 10 years.
Oh, I mean, this is just like companies that set up websites and adapted the internet versus companies that only advertise in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
When the yellow page distribution shrunk and they wondered why their business dried up, gee, I wonder why. We're just in the next evolution of it, right? This is just the next evolution of technology.
All right. So
be ahead of it
or a victim of it.
Or victim of it. Yep. Well said.
What do you think? Are we headed towards total collapse and rebuild the system from the ground up, or a soft landing of transformation?
I think it's somewhere in the middle, Bob.
Okay.
I think there's going to be some level. I mean, at some point, there is going to be an economic collapse that forces the reset button on all this. I think. And
all
again,
right. A little bit dark, but okay.
I mean, it's just the cycle. We're coming up very quickly, coming up on the 100-year cycle of the Great Depression, the Great
Right.
Stock Market crash. And when you look at the patterns, you could see a potential repeat of the same thing. Now, are we
Mhm.
saying that there's going to be a massive stock market crash in 2029 and it's going to be the exact same thing? I'm not going to say that. But I think you're seeing a lot of the trends, and they say history repeats itself every 100 years.
Mhm.
I think there's going to be an economic reset in the near future, and it's going to be technology on the other side that wins.
I'm going for a more positive spin on that. I think we land in a good place. I don't think there's a collapse. Uh, I think that there is not like a stock market collapse. I just think the tailwinds right now, especially technologically, are so strong. I don't see that collapsing. Where I do see collapse is like employment. And I think we've got to deal with that from a societal level of, what do we do with 20%, 30% unemployment rates? We haven't seen that before, except maybe in, the Great Depression. And that was a very different situation because it's not like the economics were as strong. So I think that there could be a societal struggle, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a stock market struggle. I do think that there's going to be a counter swing. I think that by say the next 2 to 3 years, 2027, 2028, I think companies are going to be begging for middle managers like toilet paper in 2020. I think they're going to wake up and realize that nobody left in their organization knows how to do anything anymore, or how the pieces fit together. And they're going to scramble to hire back all their furloughed or laid off employees because they're not built for what the future is going to require of them as an organization.
Yeah, I think there's a point in the very near future where, especially the boomers that are in charge of these organizations, especially the smaller business side, they're just going to take the pennies on the dollars to get out, and
Yeah,
you're going to have a new wave of problems to solve, a new opportunity, right? You buy a company
sure.
for pennies on the dollar, that's a lot of opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
When every generation is losing, who is winning? The syndicate. The
I
syndicate
would
is
say
behind this.
the syndicate's point. I would say fortune favors the prepared. Learn AI, learn leadership skills, improve your EQ as an individual. Those are your action items. As an organization, don't chase results over healthy organizational function and realize that it's going to be a bumpy 5 to 10 years. I do think that there is a future, a scenario where goods and services are so cheap that we don't necessarily need to work. Um, and this is Elon Musk is, I think, an advocate for this thought or this potential future. And so I do think it changes the nature of work because I think people need to work to be happy. We need to contribute something to feel like productive members of society. People that don't work are not generally happy people. And so I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to rethink what work means and make work not suck because it's a totally different paradigm.
I agree. And I do think there's a point where, yes, I do think there's a shift where what did you call it again? The universal base income.
Basic income.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a point where that kicks in, and then, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a whole lot of dystopian issues with that potential. But you said goods where they're just so cheap that they don't really
Mm-hmm.
cost much. I think we have a fundamental problem that's going kind of like counter to that. If you go to pretty much anywhere else in the world,
Mm-hmm.
Japan, somewhere in Europe, you could get good, healthy food for a very reasonable price. You come to the US and let's just say, I mean, walk to the grocery store, spend $15 getting some good, healthy food. To do that in the United States, it's $80. What can you get for $15? You can get ramen and processed food. And the problem is our cheap goods are unhealthy, which then drives all the health problems, and healthcare is skyrocketing through the roof. And so I think there's a whole series of other problems that have to be solved before that can happen.
But that's a different episode.
That is a different episode. Going back to this one, I think in the short term, we've got an older generation that is trying to get out of their business. They want a premium for it so they can do all the luxury things for the rest of their days. Good on them for wanting it. I think we've got 4 generations with 4 that are very vastly different and have different career goals, different progressions. And I think there is a collision there. And that's where the lack of alignment's coming. You've got AI and technology that are fueling change even faster than the average person can keep up with. And I think the best thing you can do to weather the storm, if you're an organization, is to be forward-looking. Look at the early indicators, ride the wave. If you're an individual, the same exact thing. Learn what you can, diversify your career, and stay ahead of the curve. And remember, until AI can beat the human brain, you still have a job as long as you're on the forward side of that curve.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.